I like that Marianne started in that question of like, why, what made you do this? And I think like, you know, for my own self and other entrepreneurs, and actually I sort of like to talk about accidental entrepreneurs, who are people who didn't necessarily want to be business people. They weren't like starting a business, but they wanted to help somebody with something. They wanted to be a coach. They wanted to write. They're a good writer and they wanted maybe a side hustle for writing. And then they woke up one day to the realization that this is a business that I have to organize myself around. I have to do all of these pieces about it. I have to really kind of get clear for myself on what it is I'm trying to do here, because it's very easy when you sort of fall into something to be overwhelmed and doing too many things. But what I found is like, not just accidental entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, but kind of everybody in the whole world is busy and frantic, but not in any way sure that they're doing like the thing. And the thing is the thing that they want to do with their life, right? Like, and it can be anything. There's no right or wrong answer here. Maybe it's, for one person, it might be a best-selling book. For another person, it could be like the perfect beef bourguignon. So I'm not sure how you say that word, to be honest. It has like 54 vowels, but you know, it's really hard, apparently, according to the internet. I was like, what's the hardest thing to cook? And it said beef bourguignon.
Bourguignon.
Oh, say it again.
Beef bourguignon.
Bourguignon. Right.
Yeah,
so it's French.
good.
So of course it's hard, right? Yes, exactly. Yeah. It could be, it could be like, I want to make mind-bending artwork. Yeah, it could be that. Or it could be like, I want a seat on the United States Senate, or I want a tightly knit family life, or I want to be the CEO, or I want to have $1 million house. Like, it doesn't matter to me what it is you want. It matters that you know what it is you want. And what I find is that people have an inkling, or they really, really know what it is. And yet, no matter how busy they get, no matter how much they're doing, no matter how many expectations they're meeting, they don't feel like they're getting any closer to that thing. And that to me feels like the tragedy of a lifetime, right? It's like eventually that your time on this planet will be gone and you will not have done the thing. And that's really why I started, that was my own story. I felt like I wasn't, you know, becoming the sort of thought leader around psychology and mindsets and time management. And I really wanted to be like, I'm exhausted by the way that people talk about time management in the world. It frustrates me. Everyone's so shame-filled about what they haven't done. And I think that's terrible. And yet I wasn't necessarily making a difference. I wasn't really doing the thing. And that was unacceptable to me. And so the question that I became sort of obsessed with was, what does it actually take to do the thing? And what I found is that first you got to know what the thing is. And that's not in the journal, although there is a 5-day vision challenge that I will drop a little link to in the chat that you can definitely do if you're like, I just don't know what my thing is. Yeah, you do. You totally know what your thing is. You just don't believe in yourself. You're just not hearing yourself. Sometimes I describe this experience of like getting a sense of it out of the corner of your eye, like in your peripheral vision. You're like, oh, that's the thing I want. Like, that's the thing I'm interested in. But you get so busy doing other things that you never get like your hands around it. You never get your brain around it. That vision guide thing will help you really dig into it and think about what that thing is. So you got to know what it is. That's key, step number one. But you also need to remember what it is, because very often people experience what I call goalmnesia, which is where you set a goal. You're like, okay, the thing I'm going to do, I'm going to finally start posting on social media and building a little tribe for myself. And then you're real excited about it. You're like, I'll post 3 times this week. And then like 3 weeks later, someone says, hey, you said you were going to be posting on social media. I haven't seen anything. They're like, oh crap. Yeah, right. I was going to do that. I totally forgot that I was going to do that. That's goalmnesia, which is also, if you've seen the TED Talk, is the defense of failure. It's like your brain's actually just walking you around it because you don't believe that you can do it. So one of the key tenets to that, one of the key sort of solutions to that is built into the journal, which is regularly reminding yourself of what it is you want to do, because you will forget because of all the expectations, all the habits, all the usual stuff you spend your time doing does not go away unless you get rid of it, which is the second thing actually that has to happen in order for you to do the thing. First, you got to know what it is and remember it. That's one. The second one is you have to say no to a lot of things in order to do the thing. There's a reason you're not doing it. One of those reasons is you don't have the time for it. Now you can look at that from either direction, right? You can either say, I'm so busy and that's why I'm not doing the thing, or sneakily, I am so busy as a defense mechanism, as a distraction mechanism, as a means of stopping myself from doing the thing. Because doing the thing is scary. It puts you out there, you really care about it. You don't want other people to judge you or be mad at you for doing it. There's all kinds of reasons why we don't do the thing we want to do. We don't really face those head on. Instead, what we do, unless you have the Aligned Time Journal, because that helps you face it head on, what we do instead is we fill our time with other stuff. Just, oh, well, I can't do the thing that I'm terrified I might never do and terrified that I can't do. I'm full of shame and fear about the whole thing, tied up in knots. Because I'm busy watering my neighbor's yard. I must walk my dog 14 times a day. And I'm not saying you shouldn't walk your dog. You should. But, like, what are we doing with our time? That's why the solution that I came up with for how do you do the thing is a time management solution. Because there's no other option but to spend your time doing it, which is the third thing, right? So first you got to know what it is and remember it. The second one is you have to say no to everything that you're using to distract yourself, which might make a lot of people mad. It might cause people to feel like you are turning away from them. You can cause you a lot of drama. Like, it's going to be hard to say no to a bunch of stuff is my point. You have to, because you don't have the time to do the thing right now. You don't have it. You got to create it by saying no to everything that isn't moving you in the direction that you want to go, or that keeps you out of jail, right? Like, you have to pay your taxes. So sadly, we can't skip that. But all the stuff that we're doing for other people, like scheduling your kids' Easter party at school, insisting that you have orchids instead of bushes, right? Things that take a lot of time and maintenance. Unless you love those things. If you love those things, you should do those things. It's not about there being a right thing. It's about you prioritizing your thing and saying no to the rest of it so that you have time to do it. So once you have identified the thing, you got to remember it. You have to say no to a shit ton of stuff. And then the final piece is that you have to be taking action on the regular to move that thing forward. It's so basic that you could have written the Aligned Time Journal. I know it, right? And yet it's all knotted up. There's little minefields everywhere you turn. Every piece of this can get complicated. And so into the Aligned Time Journal go research-based ways around it. So let's actually look at the inside of the Aligned Time Journal, and I'll point out the places where the research is there to support you when you are most likely to get stuck. So let me just share my screen.
Amanda, you're going to walk us through
Yes.
the page and okay, awesome.
Yep, that's what we're doing right now. So the first bit of the Aligned Time Journal helps you figure out what to focus on. Now, again, this isn't the big vision, the someday vision. If you need to do that work, then doing it with that guide on that 5-day, like that's a thing to do. I wouldn't wait to start with the Aligned Time Journal to do that vision work, but it's probably a good idea for you to have some thoughts about that. But what we're doing with the Aligned Time Journal is we're starting at the question, what am I going to focus on? That is the question of the Aligned Time Journal. What can I focus on in these 90 days, in this week, in this day, that will move me forward? That's what the routines and structures of the Aligned Time Journal help you do. Okay, so the way that it works with the Aligned Time Journal is we start with this thing called the Web of Life. So the Web of Life are basically projects that you may or may not care about, right? This is a list of things that in looking at all the research, what are the things people care about? They care about their relationships. They care about so we have intimate relationships and friendships and family. They care about their finances. They care about their social life and their career and their hobbies and creativity and adventure, spirituality, their physical space, their personal development. If they have a business, they care about things like getting some clients and their business finances and creating events, networking, writing, blogs, products and courses, website updates. They care about things like that. If they have a strong self-care need, which we all should, but some people don't know how to exactly prioritize that. They may think about things like meditation or exercise, and then you may have things that are totally not on this list. So the first thing to do is to go through and say, these are the things I care about. Mark them all. You don't have to pick 12 yet, just mark every one of them that you like. We won't be doing that on this. I'm just walking you through it. But first things first, mark all the things you care about and then add to the list your ideas. So if you are a painter, there might be something that feels really concrete to you, like exploring abstract portraits. Like that's not going to go on everybody's list because nobody else knows what that means. But to you, it feels extremely concrete, well worth spending some time over the next 90 days thinking about. And you might, check a box next, or you would write it in and check the box. That's what would go in your ideas. Once you have all of the things that matter, you have to pick 12 of them. And you put them in the big circles on the Web of Life. So if you're on 2 pages in, you'll see the Web of Life. There's all these circles. In each one of these, you put something, one of the 12. And then the next thing that you need to do is you need to prioritize those. Now, every single one of these things matters, and yet you must prioritize them. They all matter, which one matters the most. So you would add a little number in the tiny circle next to the big circle that shows you, this is the thing that I've decided matters to me, top 12. This is how it matters relative to all the others. The reason that we're doing that is because we're going to put 12 of these around here. We're going to put our little ranking numbers in here. And then we're going to go through and we're going to put little dots that show how satisfied we are with that part of our life. The purpose of this is to show us where we are out of alignment with our priorities. So for example, out of 12, social media is a 10. I don't really care. And I'm not really very satisfied. So I don't know that this is really where I want to be spending my next 90 days focusing. I don't care about it. Who cares that it's not that doing that well? It might very well be that whatever I work on in the next 90 days elevates social media to a higher priority. Then it will matter that I don't care about it. But this is something that probably wouldn't make it onto your long-term goals or your 90-day goals. Whoop. However, if you look at exercise, right, this is a number 4. I have medium satisfaction with it. That might be something it's worth working on. It's a pretty high priority. I'm only mostly satisfied with it, or like a little bit more than halfway satisfied with it. That could be something I should work on. And then over here, I'm going to turn this around. Downtime, you'll notice very low satisfaction, very high priority. This is an area where I am vastly out of alignment with what I want for my life. I'm desperate for some downtime. I don't have any. That would be a great option to start thinking about in terms of what we want to be spending my time on for the next 90 days. Because the Aligned Time Journal is asking you, find 3 things. 3 things that you're going to remind yourself about, work your way through your issues around, and actually make some progress on to move you in the direction of what it is you want to do with your life. Just 3 things for the next 90 days. Nobody thinks you're going to get all the way to the thing in those 90 days, but we're going to be moving forward in high leveraged places.
Amanda, can I kind of ask a question, but
Mhm.
also say this back to make sure I'm understanding
Sure.
clearly?
Yeah.
So am I understanding the web of life, the purpose of that is to help identify like what is most important to me, to any of us, to
That's-
help I to get clear on the focus for the next 90 days.
Mhm.
So there's even more than 12 things to bring to the ebb of life, then I'm choosing the most important 12 and the others can kind of just go sit by the wayside.
Yep.
And through the process, it's coming down to 5, but then even from those 5 areas, I'm only going to pick 3
Great. Mhm.
goals for 90 days. And then the other step that you said before is I just have to say no to everything else that's not.
Mhm. Yeah, and while being realistic about life. It's
Right.
not that you would say, like, it's not like you say no to your sister for the next 90 days. It's more like, I'm going to, if there's something that's taking up a ton of your time,
Mm-hmm.
you really, really minimize it. You say as much of a no as you can, given the fact that you're a full, like, throttled person with multiple commitments. It's just, don't use the fact that you have those multiple commitments as an excuse not to make the choices necessary to
Like
move.
don't be choosing other things that are not in the 3
Yes.
so I can move forward on the 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep. And the way that you go about saying no to those things, there's lots of different ways, right? You can say no by delegating it. You can say no by putting it on what I call long-term pause, which is like, I'm not going to do this for the next 90 days, but it's still important to me. I'm acknowledging to myself that I'm going to get back to this, but not in the next 90 days. The problem is that we keep all these open loops. Like, I think, Christine, you've shared like 40 open loops, right? I'm trying to move 40 things forward perfectly. You will not succeed at that. It's not possible to succeed at that. And so instead, what you do is you choose a few that you feel like are really, really moving you in the direction of the thing that you really want to do with your life. And then you move those 3 forward and you watch to see what happens. Part of what we're trying to do is give you a lived experience that's different from the one you currently have, right? Currently, it's like, I'm constantly spinning plates and I don't know, and I can't see what matters to me. Well, what happens if you choose just the 3 and you move them forward in a conscious way? Do you feel better? You will, right? But in order for that to work and not just put more pressure on 3 things, but everything else is still there, you have to say no to a bunch. So it's really sort of like just coming to grips with the reality that you can move forward what you focus on, and you can't really focus on truly more than 3 things at a time. Most people. All right, so you do this process, right? You find out where you're out of alignment using the web of life, and then you have to translate those into 90-day goals. Now, all of this you step by step in the journal. We skipped some pages, but there's a part where you choose, like Christine mentioned, you choose 5 and you brainstorm around that area. You identify a concrete option for each of those that you could move forward in 90 days. You do some translation work, and that's where we're here now. Like, let's say that you arrived at something like finances are important to me. And now you're asking yourself the question, in 1 year, so first of all, when you're choosing the 3 goals, I recommend, although this is not, if this doesn't work for you, that's fine. Do what you want. I have no judgment. It's all good. But it really helps to think in terms of 3 goals. 1 that's a stretch goal. One of the problems people make is that it's like 3 massive stretch goals, and then they are stretched all the time. I'm going to both exercise 5 times a week and that, like, they don't exercise at all, but like, miracles. I'm going to exercise 5 times a week. I'm also going to write a book, not like write a blog. I'm going to write a book right now while I'm exercising 5 times a week. So already, I don't know about that. And then I'm also going to repaint my whole house. Me, personally, I'm personally going to repaint my whole house. 3 massive stretch goals. And I say that as though those are outrageous, but I can't tell you how many people I've talked to where that's exactly what they're doing. They are beating themselves up because they're not writing their book and they're not going to the gym and they haven't painted a single room. And it's like, why would you think you could do all of that at once? It's not possible. There's a way that we set goals to make ourselves feel like people who set goals. But I want you to move out of that and be a person who knows how to accomplish the goals. So one way to do that, like I said, is to set 3 goals. One is a stretch goal that is going to tax you. You're going to want to quit it. Pick that one carefully. And then you want a support goal, one that makes that stretch more likely to succeed. So something that is like foundational to the stretch, or gives you extra resourcing while you're stretching, or helps you have someone to talk to, or some support, or whatever it is, in order to make that stretch possible. And then you want a sanity goal. The sanity goal is going to be your hardest goal. Let's just clear that up now. You're like, but it feels like cheating to say that I'll meditate every day. That's so easy. Nope, it's going to be your hardest one. You will so quickly mortgage your own sanity and happiness so that you can accomplish things. If you are in any way a little bit of an accomplishment junkie, which most people who buying like time management journals are accomplishment junkies. I mean, I am. We all are. And so the sanity goal is going to be one of the hardest ones, and you need to mean it. You need to mean it like you mean the other 2 goals. So an example here is I want to start speaking on stages. That would be like a stretch goal if you've never done it before. I would love to be more organized with my contracts and paperwork, because that's one of the things that happens when you start speaking, especially speaking for money, is like all this paperwork, all these reminders, all this stuff to follow up on. Everything's on a deadline. It's a pretty big system in order to support professional speaking. So that's a support goal. I'm not gonna assume that all of that's gonna happen without my involvement. I'm going to settle in and make that work. And then I need to exercise at least twice a week. Now, for somebody, that might be a stretch goal. It's not about exercise and downtime being sanity goals for everyone. For some people, it might really and truly be a stretch goal. For this person, this hypothetical person, exercising twice a week is something that keeps them feeling grounded. It's not a problem. It's not a stretch goal. If it's a stretch goal for you, make it the stretch goal. Don't just pretend like it should be your sanity goal if it doesn't actually bring you additional sanity. It's not going to work. So then once you pick a goal, right? So picking one of those, let's say it's like, I want to get more organized with my contracts and paperwork. You would then put that over here, right? You would check the little box here for sanity. And then in 1 year, I aspire to, like, what would you like? We call this accessible aspirations, something you can do in 1 to 3 years. And it's like, you can see it, you can feel it. It doesn't feel that far away, but you know it's going to take you some time to like iron out the kinks. An accessible aspiration is like 1 to 3 years. So in this case, 1 year. Well, in a year, I would really like to have a system that's out of my hands. I would really actually like to I would like to delegate all of this to someone, but I know that before I can do that, I need to figure out how to do it myself. So that's like in 1 year, I'd like to have a fully outsourced paperwork system. Now you translate that into 90 days. Well, that's what I just did. I'm like, okay, well, I know first I have to figure out what to do here. So if I'm like, I will figure out my entire billing process, the question I want you to ask yourself is this one at the bottom: does accomplishing that overwhelm you? We're all trying to do things that overwhelm us. Once you're overwhelmed, you're going to throw the brakes on it. Goalmnesia is going to happen. You're going to be like, what did I want to do? No idea. I'm going to go watch Netflix. It is really difficult to do something that you feel overwhelmed by. So instead, set a 90-day goal you can achieve. So if it's really overwhelming to figure out your entire billing system, maybe it's, I'm going to, in the next 90 days, at least once a week, I'm going to sit down with my bills and just organize them. I'm going to take 90 days to just find them and put them in a system and get them all on the right card and figure out like and maybe there's like one piece of it that you can really figure out, like I'm going to set up Wave for invoicing, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It comes down to what you understand about your options that you've already been looking into. Christine, do you have a question?
I do. I think what I'm realizing, because I recall when we did the beta, getting clarity on the stretch, the support, and the sanity goals. It's like, oh, I'm really following this now with your examples. So stretch is something that's going to tax outside our comfort zone. And I'm hearing that the support goal is going to make that easier. But what I'm realizing, like, I mean, these are good examples for me because I could apply. How would you respond to if the support goal, yes, will make the stretch goal more doable?
Hmm.
But if the support, but if thinking of that, this is where I want to be cautionary and hear what you have to say. Like for me personally, I'm realizing, yes, I would love to be more organized with paperwork, all that, and I'm working on it. But I think I'm realizing that is not added resourcing for me. That's almost like another
That's another
stretch
stretch goal.
goal.
Hmm. Yeah. So what I would do in that case is I would make getting organized with all of your paperwork your stretch goal, and then ask yourself, what's going to help me be able to do that? And it might be investigating different ways of like looking into different systems, having a conversation. Like you could easily have a 90-day goal that is have conversations with people about things. And every week you ask yourself, who can I talk to this week to find out more? I'm going to talk to a bookkeeper. I'm going to talk to an accountant. And all these free calls people are offering all over the internet, go have some. That could be a support goal that gives you insight and information into the system so that you can then begin to organize and think of new ways and um, about how to do the paperwork. So
Okay.
what's a stretch and what's a support and what's a sanity? It's all about where you're at. What
Mhm.
feels like it's going to stretch you.
Okay. Well,
Um,
actually, I'm glad this example showed up this way because it just can help me. So, like for speaking, it might be like join Toastmasters or something, not get more organized.
for speaking, if speaking is your stretch goal and you're like, wow, speaking on stages is like, woo, that is like, that's an accessible aspiration. Because then the 90-day goal is join and participate in Toastmasters and handle
Mhm.
all the drama that's going to come up with it. Because if you have like stage fright or worries about your ideas or inferiority complexes, or like we all do, right? Like if that's something that brings up the drama in your blood, then make it a stretch goal. Then a support goal for that might be actually, if I were blogging more, I would feel less like an inferior, like I would feel less like an imposter on the Toastmaster
Mhm.
stage. And it helps me in other ways to blog, right? It's not like it's only for the purpose of supporting speaking. I also want to share my ideas more broadly. So I'm going to do both of those things, like, so then I'm going to write blogs and that feels like a support goal because I kind of know how to do it. It's not super stressful. But it also makes me feel like I have more to say when I get to Toastmasters. So that's another example of
Okay. I think what I'm hearing is, I mean, just how unique we all are. So it's going to be that unique to the individual. Will you just say again when you describe the support goal, how you describe? You said it will make the stretch goal more doable.
it.
It could be resourcing or what else?
Um, it can be foundational. Sometimes it's foundational, like where it's like I need to like that's one way to think about the blog slash speaking one. It's like one of the things I just feel like I don't have are good ideas. Like I just worry about my ideas. But I feel comfortable blogging. So I'm going to blog and I'm going to share my ideas. Or you can do it on social media. I'm just going to start sharing on social media, like putting myself a little bit more out there, saying slightly more aligned things to my brand or whatever. Um, and that is foundational because one of the things that's really going to stress me out about speaking is all that imposter stuff about my ideas. So if you know what's going to stress you out about your stretch goal, putting something in place to support that piece of it would be a support goal.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
And sanity goals are foundationally support goals because they're about you as a human, like as a holistic human. What do you need to feel resourced? That's what you get from a sanity goal versus a support goal. And again, these are very loose, like flexible structures just to help you not massively overwhelm yourself with 3 enormous stretch goals with no support. Okay. Once you do that, then what I would recommend is I'm going to actually put this link. This is one of the things that's in the bonus pack for the Align Time Journal. This is something that you can you go into this link, which I'm about to give you once I find the chat. There it is. And it gives you information. It talks you through how to create this in Canva. There's a Canva template for it. You go into Canva via your Canva account and you put your 3 goals on this thing and you make it your desktop wallpaper so that it just keeps you focused on it. And that helps you to remember that this is what you're hoping to do. Once you have your 3 goals, right, your 90-day goals, Here is that example we were talking about. Schedule 10 speaking engagements in the next 90 days. Figure out my paperwork. Exercise 3 times a week, let's just say. Then you've got your 90-day goals. And often this is where people stop. They're like, okay, I got my goals. Now I'm going to work against my goals. But it's hard to know what to do this week or what to do today without spending some time thinking about it. And that's the next piece of it. It's about taking on weekly tasks. So I have a little triangle thing that actually, let me bring that up because I think it's helpful just to talk about like the difference between goals and tasks and to-dos can be a little hard, right? It can be a little like, wait, but how am I supposed to know the difference between these things? So let me just bring this up. It's kind of a weird format, but it'll do. So let me stop sharing this and start sharing that. All right. So basically, you have a vision, which is the thing, right? Like, what is it that I want to do? So that's your catalyzing vision. That, when is that going to happen? I don't know. Someday is fine for your vision. And the way to move your vision forward is just to amp up the emotion. Go search anybody talking about manifesting, and they'll tell you, like, if you're trying to manifest your vision, what you need to do is visualize the deep emotion of it, get yourself excited, like make it feel like the most exciting roller coaster you've ever been on. Like really visualize and make it feel awesome. The problem is that people do that and then they try to work directly from that vision, and that's just a terrible idea. It's just not a good idea because it will overwhelm you. Because like if your vision is, here's an example of a vision down here, right? If your vision is to create a 7-figure business, trying to figure out how to create a 7-figure business today is going to shut you down. It's overwhelming. This comes back to that point of overwhelm. So instead, anytime you find yourself with a vision, you have a great idea, recognize that it's a vision, and then bring it down into the levels that we can work with. So for example, accessible aspirations are something we can do in about a year. In this example, it's like, I want to make a profit in my business this year. I'm tired of spending all the money I make to try to make money. That is something that happens in the first few years of almost every business. But you've reached the point, this fictional person here, that you actually want some of your money for yourself. The making a profit this year is an accessible aspiration. In the next 90 days, I'm going to figure out how to work from a budget. There's a lot of figuring out that happens often in the 90-day budgets or in the 90-day goals. But then still that's not enough. You have to break it down into a weekly task, which is make an operating budget draft. This week, I'm just going to make a draft budget. I don't even have a budget yet. How am I going to have a 7-figure budget? Like if I don't even have a budget yet, how am I going to be able to work from the idea of having a 7-figure business? So I'm going to make a draft. But even that, if you don't ask yourself the question, like, why is that hard? Which I'll show you in a minute, every single day, every single week, you ask yourself, why is that hard? So that you can work your way around it. That's a critical piece of it. So that becomes a daily to do. Okay, I'm going to ask Matt for help. So using that as an example, asking Matt for help and making an operating budget draft. First of all, these are the levels. They're based, like someday, in 1 to 3 years, in the next 90 days, this week and today. They're different kinds of ideas. Just recognize when you have an idea what you're really talking about. Okay, so moving back to walking through the Align Time Journal over here. Weekly tasks, right? When you'll get to this page, which asks you, first and foremost, remember how I was saying that goalmnesia is one of the main things that you're trying to avoid? You're trying to prevent? Well, I'm going to ask you every week, go look at your 90-day goals. Remind yourself what they are. Remind yourself what you said you cared about. Look at them. Me personally, when I'm using it, I usually write it down. I will put little arrows and write the 3 goals right there. You also have it on your desktop wallpaper. So you're being reminded daily. Then you ask yourself, okay, it's week 1, time to go. We're going from 3:21 to 3:28, or I'm sure the math of that is wrong. That's the week that we're in. What 3, it says here on the side going in a direction you probably can't read. What 3 things will move me forward this week? Well, what 3 things can I do this week to move me forward? So let's just say if we were working on that example of operating from a on a budget, well, we know what we put in here, right? It's like make a draft budget. What's likely to get in my way? It says for this box here. And you say, I do not know how to do that. Let's be real. I'm not even sure what a budget looks like. And so then how am I going to get around that, right? So we do, oops. What would I like to do this week? What is going to get in my way? How can I get around it? Well, in this case, I would say I'm going to ask Matt for some help. I'm going to ask Matt and he's going to help me. And once he helps me, then I'll do it. So it's, and then if necessary, if you discover that you have set an enormous weekly task that you are in no way prepared to do in 1 week, you might then go back and change your plan for the week. If instead of saying create a draft budget, you said create an operating budget that I can begin to use next week, and then you realize I don't know how to do that or what that even is, you might come back here and say, make a budget draft. Just take a stab at it, right? It allows you to stay in the space where you can actually do things and you're not overwhelmed. So then you're like, okay, fine, I'm just going to make a budget draft. Still don't know how to do that. Okay, now I'm going to ask Matt for help. So this gives you the workbench space. I'm going to show you in a minute the inside of my Align Time Journal so that you have no qualms about making this a hot mess, because it is full of things that I have like changed and moved around and, you know, worked my way through, because it's not meant to be a presentation. You would never share it with somebody else. I mean, I'm going to, but you would never have to, because it's basically where you're doing your thinking. You are helping yourself think your way through. Then once you've set your 3 goals, your 3 tasks for the week and worked your way around them, then you're going to ask yourself, okay, that's what I'm doing this week. So what am I saying no to? Because if you don't stop and say, ooh, maybe you need to look at your calendar and you realize I do not have time to do these 3 things. And then you've got a choice, either back out of some of the stuff this week or figure out a way to get up early or stay up late or move some things around so that you've got the blocks of time that you need. Only you know by looking at your calendar what you need to do in order, what you need to say no to in order to move these things forward. Very often the things I personally am saying no to are inside my own head. I've got the time. It's really that I'm going to be a perfectionist about it. And I'm going to say no to being a perfectionist, because when I'm a perfectionist, I make too much of it. It takes too long. I freak out about it. I stall out, whatever. Like, I know myself. I've watched myself do this for 5 years. That's one of the best things about the Align Time Journal. You become an expert on your own ways of making change. So what am I going to say no to this week? Maybe I'm going to say no to all the drama about how I should already know how to do this. That's a big one for me. If I think that grown-up people already know how to do this, but I don't know how to do it, I have a hard time. I feel like, oh man, I should figure it out on my own. But the truth is I need to go ask Matt. And so instead of having a lot of drama about how I should know how to do this already, I'm going to accept myself for who I am. And I'm going to ask Matt for help. So that's what I would say no to. And then how can I keep my life in balance this week is a little, sometimes this is where you might bring up your sanity goal, because maybe you didn't actually advance it in your 3 to-dos. And you're going to say, I'm going to meditate this week, or I'm going to, I don't know, back out of that thing I was supposed to do that I secretly don't want to do, whatever. You check in with yourself about what you're going to say no to and how you're going to keep your life in balance. Now, once you have that set up for your week, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes once you know how to do it. The first one might take a while, as with all things, right? The first time you do it, you're like, wow, that took a long time. It won't take that long going forward. And then it's time to have a day, right? Like maybe you set this up on a Sunday and then it's Monday morning. It's time to align your day. Now we're talking about daily to-dos. Now, some things that you need to do are not going to pop up in your Align Time Journal. I never say in my Align Time Journal that I'm going to meet with my clients, because of course I'm going to meet with my clients. There's the things that are on my calendar, doctor's appointments, client visits, teaching my classes, all that stuff is going to happen because it's what I do. They don't need me to be aligning my time and moving it forward because they already happen. I've already figured all that out. I know how to do it. I don't need it to be in my Align Time Journal. So if you have a calendar where you're putting things like that, those aren't the things that necessarily go into your daily to-dos. And if you have a bunch of random little bits and pieces of stuff that you're keeping in a to-do list, sometimes those don't go in to your Align Time journal either. But what you might say is, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the amount of little crap, tiny bits and pieces, bits and bobs, as it were, that I got to do. You may put in your Align Time journal, do a 2-hour block for bits and bobs, or whatever you call your sort of like R&D, make this call, pay that bill, the little bits and pieces that you have to get to. But most of what you're going to be doing in here is asking yourself the question, how can I move my weekly tasks forward today? So in here is where you would write something like, ask Matt for help. Right? Ask him for the help. This isn't receiving the help. This is writing the email to ask for help.
Who's Matt?
In my mind, Matt's the budget guy at my work, like that. He's just the guy from the example. Like, Matt knows budgets, right? He's hypothetical, except in my mind, he's not. But first and foremost, every day you're going to do the same thing that you did on the weekly. You're going to ask yourself, wait, what did I say I would do this week? Because you will have forgotten. Every day I have forgotten what I said I would do this week. So I'm like, wait, what am I doing? It's like 5 a.m. Y'all know I wake up super early, sitting there like looking at my Align Time journal, being like, what? Who am I? What am I doing? Oh yeah, okay. And I just fall back in to place. Okay, this is what I'm doing this week. Earlier this week, I already made sure that aligned to my 90-day goals. Now I just have to make sure I do these things this week. So I would write them down, and then I would say, what can I do today? Okay, I'm going to ask Matt for help. I'm not going to receive Matt's help. I'm just going to ask him for the help. So this is where you get to the place where you're like, but that doesn't mean it's easy. The fact that it's small does not mean it's easy. Anything with emotional baggage is going to take more time than you think. So maybe I feel like weird about it because I feel like I should already know how to do budgets. That's what's going to get in my way. In order to ask Matt for help, I have to admit that I don't actually know what budgets are about. And that will stop you subconsciously if you don't admit it. But if you admit it, then you get to work your way around it, and it's not that hard. You say, okay, I'm going to feel awkward about the fact that Matt will know that I don't know anything about budgets. Okay, I accept you. I accept that awkwardness. I'm going to do it anyways. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Matt. I'm going to tell Matt. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to say, hey, Matt, I feel awkward about this. I know I should know this already, but I just really admire you. Please help me with this. And Matt is a nice guy, so he'll help you. So I'm just pointing out that whatever your problem is with it is fine. Don't try to be someone you're not in a place that you aren't yet. Instead, just acknowledge where you are and work your way through it. That's what we're doing. So then again, if you find like whatever it was you were asking yourself to do is like way too much for you right now, then you can go back and change your what you said you were going to do, right? Which is just this idea. Okay, so this is how you use the Align Time journal, and you did it. And then at the end of the 90 days, you're going to check in and say like, well, did I have the impact I was hoping to have? But along the way, you will actually experience a different lived experience. You will feel yourself making progress, which for a lot of us is not something we're used to feeling. Even though we're making progress, we don't feel it. Even just acknowledging yourself for what you are doing can be a powerful experience.